Hello again, whiskey friends. Thanks for joining, everybody. Today, we are going to walk through multiple single barrels from the same distillery. Belle of Dayton in Dayton, Ohio, makes this 5-grain bourbon called Detrick Fine Whiskies. If you watch my recent top 5 video, you know that I actually put a batch of this as my favorite bottle of the year thus far. And then I also got my hands on a Seelbach Select here. This is my first single barrel pick of this brand. I haven't tapped into it yet, but I'm curious now to compare this to my favorite, batch 15, and also work in some tastings of prior batches that I felt really good about as well. If you haven't heard about this brand and you're curious what it's all about, stick around because we are going to learn about its flavor range together. So thank you for joining today, whiskey friends. Let's kick off the show. All right. Well, while we're getting into some of the history of who Belle of Dayton is, let's open up this single barrel here, get some glasses poured so they have a chance to open up while we talk. Now, as mentioned off the top, these are 5-grain whiskeys featuring corn, rye, malted barley, but also wheat and oats. The Seelbach single barrel is 116.6 proof and just a shy under 8 years old. The next one I'm pouring is my favorite. Batch 15, 117.8 proof, and just a hair over 9 years old. If you saw my prior video as I went through my top 5 pours of the year thus far, this is my number 1 pour, scoring a impressive 91, but I have not really compared it to other batches. The bottle that actually kicked off this obsession is batch 11, also happens to be 117.8 proof, distilled in the exact same date as batch 15, but pulled out of its barrel 9 to 10 months earlier, making this one a few months older than 8 years. This one was in our blind flight tournament for 2025, performed very well in its bracket, coming to second place, but ultimately losing to the Tanyard Hill Rye. Now, I actually thought I had another bottle. Couldn't find it. Must have killed it at some point. But I do have a leftover sample from our Whiskey Friend Advent calendar that we did with a few friends. We included this in a flight of 4 blind pours. This one was week 2. Very well received from the community. You can also check out a recent episode from the Bourbon Road podcast, shout out to our friend Todd, where they featured this exact bottle on that show as one of their tastings. Now, I don't have the bottle anymore. I believe this was batch 13. I think it was around 123 proof, if memory serves, and right around that 8-year-old mark as well. So the youngest one of this flight is going to be actually the Seelbach single barrel that I haven't had yet. For those that may not be familiar with Belle of Dayton, let's pull up their website here, get to know them a bit more. They are situated in Dayton, Ohio, also my hometown, started by Murphy and Mike LaSalle. Originally founded in the early 2010s, it looks like they started laying down whiskeys and ryes somewhere between 2015 and 2016. Their lineup doesn't include just bourbons and ryes, but they also make rum, vodka, and gin as well. And when I was talking to one of the bartenders at the bar last year, it almost sounds like they don't lay down too many runs of the rye and the bourbon throughout the month. I'm going to go to the street view here on Google Maps so that you can see it a bit more. It rests within this building by the Oregon District in downtown Dayton off of Wayne Avenue. And then on this side of the room is their tasting room, and then the distillery is over here. Cool tasting room does get crowded on the weekends if you have a chance to check them out. Now, if we go back to their website, you can actually see behind the scenes where the barrels are laying down. We get a little view of their equipment here. So here's a look at their pot still. And then up as I scroll down further here, this is a much better picture than the crappy one I just showed on Google Maps, right? And then the name Detrick. This is a revival brand, originally making whiskeys from 1984 all the way to pre-prohibition. The distillery's up there in Tip City. That's just north of Dayton. Now, personally, I haven't been getting these either from liquor stores in Ohio, the distillery itself, or from Seelbach. Seelbach is the only online retailer where I've ever seen this fall. And thus far, I believe Seelbach has done 2 picks themselves. Cost is around $97 per bottle, so the price is up there. Though with a craft distillery dabbling in 8, 9, almost 10-year age statements, I don't mind paying up for that. Now, originally, something about this brand didn't resonate with me. Maybe it was just one of the early batches, maybe it was based on the age. But I have been thoroughly obsessed ever since I got my hands on batch 11 last year. And now every single time I see it on the shelf and I see it's a new batch, I grab it. So that's enough about the whiskey. Let's start talking about the flavor notes of each of these and then determine what we learn at the end of the experience about the overall profile of this brand. Off of fresh palate, I am going to start with the Seelbach single barrel, which as of recording is out there now. So I know many of you have been asking, how can I get my hands on this? I still think that's probably the best way for many of you out of state. Now, this Seelbach one is going to be the youngest one I've come across by a few months, not quite hitting that 8-year age statement. It was also laid in a barrel in April of 2018 versus December of 2016 like the others. On the nose of this one, very clean. I'm actually getting quite a bit of the oats on this one, but it has this refreshing nature to it. Essentially getting some cinnamon-covered apples and quite a bit of just barrel, like a raw cedar. It has a sweetness to it too, much akin to a powdered sugar. Let's go in for a taste. Now, this is a pretty big characteristic I keep seeing. A lot of people attribute the mouthfeel to the oats in the process, but you can see it just destroying that glass. Man, beautiful color on this one as well. Much darker than you'd expect for something at its age. All right, in for a sip. Oh yeah. Man, that's a hitter again. Different profile than I was expecting, though. This one is very, very sweet. I'm actually quite surprised about how sugary sweet this is, and that travels from front to mid all the way to the finish pretty consistently. Some of the darker fruits I was expecting, mainly in a fig type range, were there up front, but there were also some vibrant berries, almost as if we were talking about like a raspberry jam. And mid palate's got that sweet cinnamon sugar, even a little bit of the apples I was talking about too. And then the finish, the oak picks up. Ooh, this is a good pick. Finish really carries through. And I'm even starting to get some nice rye spice on the finish on the back of the palate here. During the finish too, it's very interesting. It's probably this combination because it has the oats, the wheat, and the rye in it. But on the finish, I'm getting flavors all over the front palate, mid palate, and the back of the palate, all simultaneously. I am curious as we get through this. I think there's going to be tasting notes on Seelbach. We'll pull that up at the end too. I'm curious. It's most likely Brian who did the tasting notes. I'm curious what he has to say about that. Now I'll go through the other batches much quicker than I went through that one. So batch 11 is the one that was in our blind flight tournament of our favorite pours of 2025 earlier this year. This nose is much different than the Seelbach single barrel. It is drier and it leans more into the dried fruit range, still with some of those figs or dried cranberries, dried cherries, but nowhere near the sweetness that was on the other one. And then those dried fruits are just balanced by this oak profile here on the nose. Let's go in for a taste. Oh man, that one's beautiful. Jeezy Pete. Yeah, this one really is all about the vibrant fruits. That overall sweetness is dialed down by comparisons, but the fruits just continue to evolve throughout the process. And then again, you get this nice rye spice on the back end. What is interesting is that these do finish in a very similar way. And similarly, I am getting flavors all over the palate on the finish. Man, on that last sip, I got quite a bit of custard to go with all of those fruits as well, but it isn't bright leaning. I mean, that oak is there too. Quick run on batch 13. This one is 123 proof and was the bottle in our advent calendar if you were in that competition. Off memory, this one is a different animal. And again, go check out the Bourbon Road podcast. You know, I guess I can actually look up the episode number here. Episode 489 dropped on April 1st, titled A 4-State Craft Whiskey Tour. Well, I guess you know what's coming from Ohio in that flight. What's interesting about this one on the nose, and it matches my expectations of it off of memory, it actually has this clean effervescence to it, even leaning into more of a citrus range. Also has that nice rye spice and some very refreshing oak to it too. Let's go in for a quick taste. You know, This one's in the middle when it comes to the sweetness compared to the Seelbachs and Batch 11. So I'm starting to understand some of the connective tissue here. But again, the fruits on this one, it's mostly fruit forward. The fruits on this one are bright and even goes into some of the territory as the Seelbach's one with what I was describing as a raspberry jam. And the finish again has that rye spice and that oak. On the finish seems to be where these rhyme the most. Well, let's drift into batch 15 here. Batch 15 is the one I recently featured on my top 5 pours of 2026 thus far video. 117.8 proof and just a hair over 9 years old. I also graded this one a 91, so it's not falling off this top 10 list, probably for the rest of the year, by the way. So you just get to hear me talk more and more about it. I did go back and buy 2 backup bottles, one for me and one to feed next year's tournament. Oh, and the other reason I had to buy backups, I mean, I've been sharing this like crazy. Can't wait to hear what Todd, OH, Darrell, and Kelsey have to say about it. Woo. Man, on the nose totally confirms that this is my favorite nose of the batch. But those figs, those dried cranberries, those dried cherries, the cinnamon sugar, there's a little bit of a nuttiness on this one. Be like more of a soft nut, like a walnut. And then getting some custard notes again. I called that out earlier on another batch. Let's go in for a taste on 15. Actually, before even the taste there, I mean, geez, look at it just ravage that glass. I swear, whiskeys these days are getting so much oilier than they were just a couple of years ago on average. It's now almost the expectation rather than the exception. All right, proper cheers. Time to get a sip of what is technically my favorite pour of the year. Cheers, everybody. Ah, so gorgeous. So gorgeous again. Ah, happy dance. I love this pour. Again, fruit leaning up front. This one's more this cherry orange vibe going on. Mid palate, getting that cinnamon sugar vibes again. And then into the finish, I mean, there's a whole symphony of fruits going on, wrapped around the oak profile and a bit more sweetness too. Not to that Seelbach's level of sweetness, but there is some sweetness here. Man, this is like crushing me right now. This really is my favorite pour of the year so far. Jeezy. God, I mean, I'm literally loving every second of this. What's lovely as well though, like concentrating on the oak, there is a darker oak profile that you can trace from the front palate all the way to the finish. The finish again brings the rye spice. And because of the wheat and the oats again, it's attacking all points of the palate on the finish, front, mid, and the back. Those custard notes are there as well. I think I've now called that out on 3 of the samples. So what did I learn from today's tasting? So we're going to be dealing with a flavor profile range that is mostly fruit forward. Those fruits may come across as either dry or sweet, but really range across the stone fruits, citrus, all the way to apple. So all those are possible. More often than not, there was a custard leaning element to this. So looking for those more vanilla notes. And because of the age, there was always a oak profile to this. Though I will say the difference between the 7-year all the way to the almost 9-year definitely made a difference in how that oak presented itself. Either as a more refreshing cedar or all the way through a darker oak profile, kind of almost exceeding its age statement. On each one of these, regardless of if it was sweet up front or not, the rye spice picks up on the finish and typically ends in that more spicy range at the same time that you're getting notes mid palate and front palate. All right, let's go back to the Seelbach one. I'm going to pull up Seelbach's site here. So I've been resisting pulling up tasting notes on the site, but I know Brian's got some good notes for me here. After going back on the nose though, man, I'm getting kind of those figs and dried cherry vibes. Definitely sweeter once again. I'm going to go for another sip on this Seelbach here. Make sure the first pour of the day wasn't biasing me too much. Nope. Very sweet. Puckering sweetness. Wow. That's probably the thing that like they made them fall in love with this cask. All right, let's pull up the website here. Why is this thing in mobile mode? Okay, so we got Brian. I figured Brian would have tasting notes on this one. All right, so here's the Seelbach single barrel that we were just going over. Belle of Dayton's Detrick Bourbon isn't a secret here at Seelbach's anymore. Oh, it shouldn't be a secret over here either. Dayton roots or not. Come on. All right, year over year on Brian's best of list. So, hey, Brian, good to see you, man. Got to meet Brian randomly at Party Source a couple months ago here. All right, so, okay. So he's going to be a bit more articulate than I was, but let's go through his tasting notes. So the nose is beautifully perfumed with polished leather and seasoned oak, giving a mature classic first impression, spiced candy red fruit. So that's part of it, right? Like the candied cranberry, the candied dried cherries. And he's calling out the lemon here, that effervescence nature. I was getting that on 13. I wasn't calling that out on 16. The leather part of it is interesting. I'm getting that more now. All right, ripe banana. Understand the angle there. Plump, plush sweetness. Yes, let's definitely go with that. Palate's very weighty. Yeah, it is. I mean, I showed you how oily it was. Chewy with a rich coating texture, vibrant cherry. All right, so he's really leaning into the cherry side. So something to think about on this one with the profile. The cherry keeps coming up, talks about that warming leather, and then a Kentucky hug backed by the layered spice. That rye spice is what hits on the end. And then he's drifting into the heavy creaminess here. That makes sense. And then again, calling out the fruit and sweetness. Not too surprising. Finish is long and peppery. Once again, that's where the spice is going to come in. And then he's leaning more into the banana notes with that dark chocolate, fading fruit and leather, sweetness and spice. Okay. Man, power of suggestion, Brian. I'm now getting that banana note. Darn you, I'm so glad I did not read this beforehand. Man, I totally get that banana now, Brian. I'm going to send you this video. I do not get that on any of the other ones, by the way. That's the type of flavor note, like once you put it in my head, it was like, was I missing it all along? Or did you just implant it in this darn single barrel? Well, I think that gives a good overview of the Belle of Dayton. But now that we've gone through all this trouble, there's only one thing left to do, and that is to blend them. Let's make a foolproof, small batch Detrick's Fine Whiskey. All right, I got different proportions here of each one. All right, let's start with batch 15. That's my favorite. And then I've got about equal proportions of the Seelbach pick. Now, I didn't use quite as much batch 11 here. So let's do about half of that one. And then of the Advent pour, I didn't quite do enough of that one. We're going to do about a fourth, a fourth, a fourth here. Now, what is interesting in all of these is the different levels of sweetness versus that dried fruit profile. Now, to this date, Belle of Dayton does a blend of their rye at 104 proof, but I don't think they do any types of blends of these bourbons. And that might have to do with how many casks they have laid down. Need to have more conversations with Belle of Dayton. Man, this is interesting here. I'm like swirling around this glass trying to determine if my blend ruined how oily this was or if it's in fact so oily that it's coating the glass so well that I can't even see the legs. I actually think it's the latter there on that, by the way. All right, well, let's go in for a nose, a sip, and let's close this video down. Considering I've been at this for an hour, much longer than I expected. I love the blend off the nose there. It's got the dried fruit and it's got that combination of sweetness, taking that sweetness more middle ground like batch 11 was, but it's a little bit more elevated like batch 15. And it's got the fruits, it's got the spiciness, it's got the custard. Let's go in for a sip. Cheers, everybody. Man, that's gorgeous again. Gosh, this is gorgeous whiskey. You're killing me, man. Dried fruits are there. I'm actually getting more of the oats on this blend than I ever did before on any singular barrel. Oak is there, nice sweetness is there, finish is nice and spicy on the back end. I know I'm not wearing a Guided by Voices shirt today, but totally saw a Guided by Voices concert in the parking lot across the street at the Dublin pub from where Belle of Dayton's located. And now I'm sipping on their gorgeous whiskey, thinking about that awesome concert and just hoping with this brand, there is more to come. All right, I did my due diligence there. I love it. I'm not going to be sensical about it, and I'm going to be unapologetic going forward. So if you're a fan of Belle of Dayton, let us know in the comments. Henry, I need to hear about that 141 proof one that you found up by Troy. I need to go search for that. And just remember, while you can always find more whiskey, you can never have enough whiskey friends. So take care of those around you, and we will catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you for watching Hello Again, Whiskey Friends, everybody. A big shout out to our amazing Patreon community. If it wasn't for you, we couldn't continue to produce the content and barrel picks week after week. And for everybody else out there, be sure to hit that like and subscribe. It really helps the channel more than you know. And we'll catch you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody. You know, my intent is usually to hide myself by the time that outro starts. Always forget. Always forget.